On November the 6th, our country elected a man to be president who has promised to use the mechanisms of democracy to undermine, to destroy democracy, who has come to power because of a bastardization of religion, a racist, misogynist, homophobic, theocratic religion. In the last 10 days, we have been asked to observe the following commemorations by the United Nations. November 25th, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. November 28th, when most folks in the U.S. were celebrating Thanksgiving, we stood with the indigenous peoples of this land in a national day of mourning. November 29th, the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. November 30th, Day of Remembrance for Victims of Chemical Warfare. December 1st, World AIDS Day. Again on December 1st, also Rosa Parks Day, the day she was arrested. December 2nd, International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. December the 3rd, International Day for Persons with Disabilities. You notice a theme, this social justice theme, this theme for standing with the marginalized globally, not just locally, but globally. Tonight's program commemorates 5 days early the 76th anniversary of the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. And also, sadly, tragically, we're at now think about this, 425, 14 months. And not only 14 months, but 76 years of Israel's genocidal assault on the Palestinian people in Gaza as well as in occupied Palestine. I've been there maybe 35 times over the last 20 years. And we know these people. We know these people. And this genocidal assault is with weapons supplied by a bipartisan series, not only complicit but criminal U.S. administrations, including the present one. In spades, the present one. Yet it should be noted that also in the last 14 months, Jewish Voice for Peace, American Muslims for Palestine, and many Christian churches have been vocal in their, and also, of course, civil society groups, right? Civil society groups have been vocal in their condemnation of the hijacking of religion for this genocide. Our Indiana Center for Middle East Peace has been holding weekly vigils and demonstrations, for the last 14 months in front of the Allen County Courthouse on Tuesday afternoons at 5 o'clock. And we continue to do that even to this very week. And tonight in Washington, D.C., as we sit here in Washington, D.C., at the lighting of the National Christmas Tree, our friends are gathering at the Washington, D.C. White House ellipse. Christians for Ceasefire is leading a protest, building a replica of the Bethlehem's Christmas Lutheran Church's Christ Under the Rubble manger scene. Tonight, Washington, D.C., and the national lighting of the Christmas tree. I remind us of these important dates and these protests because tonight our speaker, Bryce Green, a leader of the protest movement at IU Bloomington, as well as these amazing poets, will remind us that all struggles for liberation are connected, that they're all one struggle for human dignity and freedom. They will call us to a creative resistance that instead of giving him, You know the him to whom I'm referring. Instead of giving him and his corrupt cronies so much space in our heads, in our collective heads, we should be much more intentional about focusing on those who will be hurt, even die because of their policies. Indigenous peoples, immigrants, people of color, women, LGBTQ plus friends and trans friends, and our mother, the planet, the earth. Like all bullies, autocrats, and tyrants, the incoming administration will go after artists first. They've already begun. Because the imagination of artists, musicians, painters, sculptors, dramatists, and others, and poets, the imaginations of artists they can't be constrained by threats. Artists fear no one. They operate according to a different, transcendent muse. That's why tonight is so important. Poets for Palestine. Poets for dignity. Poets for liberation. So let Bryce's words, let the words of the poets tonight release the activist, the artist, and the poet in you. Thanks for coming tonight.
We're going to introduce a very important person, Bryce Green. He is an organizer, student, and writer based in Bloomington, Indiana. He is currently pursuing a PhD in informatics at Indiana University, where he is involved in numerous struggles on campus. He was a member of the coordinating committee for the Indiana Graduate Workers Coalition, United Electrical Workers, a union for graduate students fighting for recognition from the university. As an undergraduate, he helped found IU's Palestine Solidarity Committee, advancing the movement for Palestine on campus. He has published about his struggles on campus in electronic Intifada, thank you. He is also a media critic with works published in Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting Fair, an outlet focusing on critical analysis of major corporate media coverage. I want you to put your hands together for Bryce Green.
So first, I want to thank everybody for not only inviting me here today, but also putting on this event. Knowing that you live in a country where every pressure, every force, all the internal logics are pushing you against organizing, are telling you that you should sit this one out, you should be apathetic, you should go watch television because this is far too complicated an issue for you to handle. But you guys know that that's not true. And so every time I see groups like this all over the country, all over Indiana especially, I get excited. In fact, it was about a year ago that the Unitarian Church in IU Bloomington had a similar event where people from around the community came, a lot of religious leaders, there were poets and other organizers came together to talk about Palestine and talk about what this war, this genocide meant for the movement, what it meant for us, for our moral safety, our character. We got together to talk about it. And one of the things that emerged was that this was the first time that a lot of these groups had seen each other, had even known each other existed. And it makes you think. I mean, this is my first time in Fort Wayne. And, it's great to see that there are groups, that there are people doing the work who see like the rest of us do, that this isn't something that you should sit out. This is something that involves you directly. And the things being done in your name require, at the very least, being alive to the issues, and at most, doing everything you can to change it. So give yourselves a round of applause for fighting against a system that's telling you to stay home. Now, I'm going to go a little bit about why I got into this work, talk about the situation at IU, and maybe if we have time, some prospects for the future, some little nuggets of hope that'll help sustain us, because God knows we need it. Like I'm sure most of you did, I grew up in America, where you learn about the greatness of our society, and that even as a black man in America, or I guess I was a black boy in America, you didn't see the horrors of American empire of the 21st century. A lot of that was externalized. A lot of that was overseas, and to the extent that you did see it, you could always justify it because things were getting better. When I was in 5th grade, we elected a black president, and I was like, oh, my parents are talking about all this racism and stuff. I don't know, we just elected a well-spoken, a charming president. Yeah. But then, you start learning. Like any halfway moral leftist, you start reading about the history, you start reading about these trends, forces that are with us today. You learn that, yes, your country was founded on genocide, past and present, of indigenous people. You learn that every privilege that you have here in this country, even if you are experiencing oppression, even if you have suffered from this country, you still have a level of privilege that is built on the exploitation of people all around the world. That every luxury we have comes at the labor of someone hidden, obscured from you, thousands of miles away. And you learn to reconcile that with this view of the country as something progressive and positive. And especially you learn about militarism and empire. You learn that you learn about Vietnam. You learn about the way we used the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. You learn about Grenada, the overthrows of all these governments of Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua. You learn about Mossadegh in Iran. You learn about all of these things. And then you realize that while you were growing up, you were watching these things on the television about these big wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. The things that as a young person, some of you guys are older, so you might have understood it. But for me, it was something that was very easy to compartmentalize, to say that this is, just violence in the Middle East. I guess some people in America are trying to do something about it. I don't really understand, so maybe I'll sit back. But then you learn this history. Then you learn about going to Afghanistan, saying that we're going to, get bin Laden, but really staying there to invade the country and try and bring democracy to the world. You learn about the false stories that brought us to Iraq. And you learn, about the interventions in Libya, Syria, ongoing all around the world. And you start to realize that you're a part of this story. Every time that you are watching this stuff on television, you're participating in the ongoing narrative of American empire. And if you're doing your work properly, learning about the empire, you eventually stumble across Israel. And you start learning that Israel has a hand in every evil that we do in the Middle East. And you also learn that America has a hand in every evil that they do in the Middle East. You learn that this country of Israel encapsulates everything that you've learned to criticize about America. This story of dispossessing an indigenous population, this hyper-nationalist, militaristic point of view, this massive apparatus of propaganda designed to keep people at home and abroad from understanding the realities of their situation. And you can't help but be moved by it, because then you see what is the cost of all that. And that's when you learn about Palestine. You learn about the people who were wiped out or expelled from their land. You learn about the people who every day have to endure an occupation and oppression, periodic bombing that they call mowing the lawn. And you learn about the fact that every American institution seems to be dedicated to their destruction. A key turning point for me was reading and learning about the work of one Alan Dershowitz. How many of you guys know who Alan Dershowitz is? I hate that too many people know about him, because he's such a pernicious force, but he encapsulates everything I'm talking about. He can write books about Israel that simply lie about the Palestinians. I grew up trying to be intellectual and, giving both sides, understanding that, some people can have a different perspective on this and other people can have other perspectives. And, it's just how about interpreting the facts. And everyone's in good faith. That's not the case. There is a cottage industry of people dedicated to misleading, misrepresenting, and denying the reality about what's going on in Palestine. And you have someone like Dershowitz who can be exposed for those lies and still be a respected professor at the most prestigious institution, educational institution in America, at Harvard University. How does that happen? That a country that's so exceptional, that's so focused on democracy, is able to have someone who's clearly fraudulent, clearly on the worst side of every issue in history, and able to hold them up as an example of academic excellence. So there's something pernicious going on in our society, and many people were closed off to this reality until October 7th happened. And after October 7th, you've seen an unprecedented groundswell of support for Palestine. You see every day, despite the fact that your co-workers, your friends, your family, your teachers, some of them might be defaulting to Israel. Some of them might be saying, it's too complicated. Or worse, that this is necessary for democracy to flourish. Throughout all that, people are still learning about the reality of Palestine every day. They had marches downtown at the downtown Indianapolis at the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, and you'd have people showing up from all walks of life, and you mingle, because when you organize, you got to meet new people. That's part of the work. But you talk to people about, what brought you here? You see, accountants who see what's going on their screen, look around, see other people casually going about their day, knowing that there's the worst carnage of the 21st century happening with their tax dollars in their name. They see other people going about their lives like there's nothing happening. And they aren't able to square that circle. So they do what they can. They show up to a protest movement. Thousands of people every day are waking up to this. And it's organizations like you guys and the work we're doing at Indiana University who are ensuring that that energy is channeled into something useful, that that energy isn't dissipated, that people, when they feel that way, don't feel isolated, that they feel like there is somewhere to go and something to do. And the work continues. When I was at IU Bloomington, I was a freshman in 2016, so, height of the Trump era. That's when I started learning these lessons about America, about empire, about Palestine, about Zionism, and it didn't sit right with me. And I noticed that there were some people on campus who did understand that Palestine is a serious issue, that it's a real country, and there are people who suffer every day, and that we should do something about it. So a few of us got together and decided to form the Palestine Solidarity Committee around 2018. We had our first call-out meeting, And there were about 3 or 4 people who showed up in support of Palestine. And then there were, about a half dozen more people who showed up from the Israel groups just there to harass us and make our life hell. So the ratio was pretty far off. Palestine wasn't that big of an issue on campus. There were some people who would bring speakers and it would cause a fuss, but nothing institutional, nothing lasting. It's that default that I was talking about in American politics, where you have every institution just oriented by default to supporting Israel because that's the path of least resistance. At an educational institution like Indiana University, with all these pressures of federal funding, donors, public relations, all of that, and these people, like a lot of other Americans, have simply turned off to the real issues and say that we're not going to rock the boat because we don't want to, endanger our livelihood, all that. So that's the conditions at IU back in 2018. After October 7th, we had a call-out meeting for the Palestine Solidarity Committee. I had since graduated and gone off to the real world and then came running back to the university and as a graduate student. And after October 7th, they had a call-out meeting. And in contrast to the ridiculous pro-Israel to serious Palestine supporter ratio of 2018, the room that we booked was not big enough to hold the amount of people who showed up. There were hundreds. I think it was 200 people. And it felt good because, people were waking up to the reality. People were challenging the system. Young people who don't have the same restrictions, the same boundaries of their media consumption. There are more than 3 channels for them. They're learning more and more, no offense, they're learning more and more about how to access information outside of these enormous apparatus of propaganda that most of the American public is subject to. And so they're taking action. And but like any organization that challenges the status quo, like anyone who rocks the boat, the university didn't like that very much. And so they began a campaign of repression and harassment against students, staff, and faculty who supported Palestine. One of the first things that we did, one of the first major events that we did after October 7th was invite Miko Peled, who some of you know, we invited him down to IU Bloomington. Miko is the son of an Israeli general who was deeply rooted in the Zionist myths, and he was essentially Israeli royalty, for lack of a better term. And he was all for the pro-Israel project, all for greater Israel, it's self-defense. You gotta defend yourself against these savages, until he had I believe it was his niece, who was killed in a Hamas suicide attack during the Second Intifada. And rather than giving in to these impulses of revenge and hate that the system that he was raised in would have him do, he reflected on his own role in creating the conditions that someone feels that a suicide bombing is the correct response to their conditions. So he was a key example of someone who embodies the humanity and the conscience that any university would be proud to have at their university. But not IU. IU doesn't want that. IU decided to go after the professor who helped us book the room and get him on some technicality, like he checked the box wrong on a form when he filled it out or something, and they launched an investigation into him for misusing university resources. And the end result of this investigation was that he was suspended from advising students for a year and suspended from teaching for a half a year. This man was Abdelkader Seno. He was the faculty advisor for the Palestine Solidarity Committee when we first got started, and he's been a loud, outspoken voice in support of Palestine on this campus since longer than I was there. and he's got the record to prove it. And the university silenced him. They kicked him off the university. We weren't even sure, given the terms of his suspension, whether or not we could even be in contact in any degree. We communicated through his lawyer for a time because the university was so repressive. And that was the first in a long series of events that demonstrated that college campuses, were willing to suppress people who were supporting Palestine. Another example that happened at IU was a art exhibit from the legendary Palestinian artist Samia Halabi. Her art was planned to be held at the museum at IU. It was a 3-year process of vetting, of planning, of prepping. But then some people in the museum staff and higher-ups, they caught wind of Samia Halabi's Instagram, which repeatedly said the words, "Free Palestine." Well, that's highly offensive, and it might be a, quote, lightning rod for violence, and we can't really prevent that violence, so we're going to have to cancel the whole exhibit. That was their excuse. We're not morons here. We know what happened. This is part of their campaign. So, again, why is it that these institutions that are supposed to be about rigorous intellectual debate and research and truth-seeking, why are they so afraid of this truth about Palestine? Again, it reinforces these themes of empire, of propaganda, of control that all of us have to break through, that have to struggle to break through on a daily basis. But throughout this whole process, the student movement has been amazing. These students are not, like I said, they're not bound by the conventions that my parents were bound by that their parents were bound by. They're willing to take more risks. They're willing to not be complacent. They're willing to go out to the streets. They're willing to go out and use their full name, say what they want on Twitter, Instagram. The consequences be what they will. And we've been struggling. We've been struggling against the university. We've been having marches, putting up posters, hosting events, hosting speakers, doing fundraising. I'm sure many of the things that you guys are doing here. And that's one of the only ways that we can tell ourselves that we're behaving morally in this situation. And I know most of you guys feel the same way. And so things came to a head this spring when the encampment started going up all around the country. We saw Columbia, we saw Texas, we saw these East Coast elite schools. We had some friends there in the Palestine movement. We saw them getting arrested. And then we asked ourselves, well, what are we going to do at this moment? And so we decided to launch an encampment of our own. We launched the Liberated Zone on April 25th, 2024. And immediately, the university, continuing in their pattern, they sent the university police department after us to tell us to disperse. But since we had hundreds of people there, what's the lowly university police force going to do? Nothing. They blow on the mega horn, said, "Oh, you guys got to leave." And we were like, well, no. And so then the university authorized the university police to call in the state police. Incidentally, the local Bloomington police wanted nothing to do with this. They wanted nothing to do with this. Saw kids in a park. You're telling me it's an emergency? I don't think so. But the state police, they don't care. So they showed up to Dunn Meadow, which is where the Liberated Zone was held, with military levels of force. There were assault weapons. There were grenade launchers. Soldiers in riot gear, looking like stormtroopers. They had a chopper flying overhead. They had drones buzzing over our heads. And they had a sniper on the roof aimed at all the students in the meadow. Again, this is just because students are in the park saying "Free Palestine" and saying the university should end their study abroad program and divest from all these companies that are involved in Israel. It's a modest ask. especially in the face of a genocide. But the university decided to send the military levels. They also had a tank-like vehicle parked on the side of the meadow just to intimidate us more. And so the officers came in, they violently evicted the camp. They arrested people. There were bruises, injuries. They arrested well over 24 people that day. And then they dispersed. And then immediately after they dispersed, that camp went back up. Because like I said, these students are serious. They care about what's going on. And after that, that brought out an enormous amount of support from the staff and the faculty. People who have not been out of their office since the Clinton years were now down in the meadow protesting in support of the students. And it was a sight to behold. And so the camp was still up for that day. And then the next day, early in the afternoon, the university sent the troops in again. And this time they had me in their sights. You know, they had the assault weapons, the stormtroopers, the sniper on the roof. But we later got the audio from the sniper's recording, and they're saying that, oh, well, we found your main instigator. It's a black man with an afro and black shorts and a blue shirt. And my friends were like, hey, Bryce, that's you. And I was like, yeah, dang, that sniper was aiming at me? That's horrifying. You had a sniper aiming at a student for saying Free Palestine too loudly and then targeting him for arrest. And later, we got the body cam footage from the officers, and they had said that they were giving orders, and they said, well, you guys, your job is to go collect the guy with the goggles, and you guys, your job is to go get black afro guy. What? You can't do that. You can't racially profile and target people for arrest. And I later learned, I had one of my friends, Mike, got arrested, another black guy with afro hair. I was like, Mike, how'd you get arrested? And it wasn't until I got that body cam footage that I was like, oh, they were just racially profiling. They're picking up black guys with afros. Insane. This is the level of force that the state and that the university is willing to use against people trying to change the policy for the better. This is how they're acting in the face of what can be called a Holocaust being done in their name. And this is one of these issues that united the university again. The day after that, the day after I was targeted for arrest, the staff and faculty, they rallied again. But throughout all of this, the university policy hasn't changed. They haven't divested. They haven't disclosed anything. They haven't even admitted that they were wrong to send in the snipers and soldiers into Dunn Meadow. So the work continues. And I know, I guess my time is running low, so even though so much has happened, we still run into this problem, right? Even not just at the university campus, but on a national level. We've done so much. We've protested, we've screamed, we've put up posters, we've beat the drums, we've marched around. But Genocide Joe still says the war should continue. Continuously, since October 7th, America has sent, on average, a weapon shipment to Israel once every 16 hours. Once every 16 hours, Israeli officials regularly say publicly to the press that this war could not continue were it not for the support of the United States. They would not have the number of bombs to drop. They ran out months ago. So despite all that we've done, the genocide continues. We might see a little, the work that we've done has encouraged them to lie a little bit more to us, to tell us that Kamala Harris is working tirelessly for a ceasefire. Y'all remember that? Yeah, utter nonsense. But the fact that they have to lie tells us that we are doing something. So despite the fact that you haven't seen the end of this phase of the conflict, despite the fact that you don't see a direct impact of our actions on their policy towards Palestine, you cannot let that discourage you. Because every good thing that we have, everything that we've had, every right that we've earned, every injustice that has been remedied, it has happened because there have been millions of people who, in the darkest of times, millions of people who you will never know, you've never heard of, you'll never know their names, but they kept doing the work. Kept doing the work for years. They kept doing the work when there was Jim Crow. They did the work when there was apartheid South Africa. There are people in Palestine who wake up every day and don't have a chance to mute the phrase Palestine on their feeds. There are people resisting every single day. There are guys in flip-flops fighting IDF soldiers who are coming into their homes to destroy them. There's no reason for us not to continue, because we know that the arc of history, it doesn't bend towards justice. It's not as simple as that. You have to bend it. You have to get up and make history happen. So if there's one thing I want to leave you with, it's the knowledge that you are in the process of making history happen, and that you might not see the fruits of your labor immediately, but you know that if you look at any historical movement, any historical injustice being righted, it requires the work that we're doing today, tomorrow, and into the future. So never forget that. Thank you.
Stay right there with me now. Don't go nowhere.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you all heard Bryce Green. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Give him a hand clap. Another hand clap, please. Okay, so I have a question for you. I have a question for you, and then I'll allow a couple other people to ask some questions if possible. What inspired you to become an activist? What was your inspiration?
Use the mic a little more.
Oh, what was your inspiration to become an activist?
My inspiration to become an activist. Well, you know, that last bit I said about, you know, the millions of people you've never heard of doing work. I first heard that from the intellectual Noam Chomsky, who, you know, has been writing for years and doing activism for years about these subjects. But he has a quote that that really helps me get out of bed in the morning. That encapsulates why you have to act. It's that, especially once you learn all this stuff about the world, it's that you have two choices when you see this stuff. You can either be pessimistic, you can give up and ensure that the world will get worse, or at least ensure that your contribution to the world getting better will be zero. You can give up. Or you cannot give up. You can be optimistic and grasp at the opportunities that must exist, and you have a chance of making the world better. Well, when put like that, the choice seems pretty easy. You have to do something. So that's my answer.
Awesome, 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 awesome. My last question is going to be for you is, who are your role models and influences with your activism? Like who is that, those people, that person, that one that just said, you know what, they triggered something in me?
So for me, it was, well, really when I learned about the history of the Black Panther Party in America.
Okay.
You know, you learn about this movement against American racism that wasn't just about the local conditions on the ground, though those were central, but also had an internationalist perspective towards the world. They didn't situate themselves just as individuals trying to make their own individual lives better. They were trying to understand the system that they lived in. They were trying to understand these processes of empire that impoverish and oppress not just them, but also millions of people all around the world. And so when I learned that Fred Hampton was just 21 years old when he was assassinated by the state for his activism, well, that's when I learned that even me as like a 19, 20-year-old kid, you can make a difference.
Yes.
And that you can do something. And if you have the will and you have the analysis, then you can get a hell of a lot done. And that has pushed me forward. And again, I also want to cite Noam Chomsky as an influence. You know, just the rigorous empirical work of figuring out how media systems work and how the government and their imperatives and the corporatocracy and their imperatives combine to shape the world that we perceive. That was a big way that I learned about Palestine, Iraq, and other issues. So I think those are the major influences.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Does anybody have a question that they would like to ask Bryce while we have him here? Okay.
I have watched the young people respond to this with such, conviction, and as a not necessarily young person, do you have thoughts on how to galvanize and incite action among people who are not necessarily young, who don't live in that access to communal courage that young people today have?
Yeah, I have thoughts, but if I had a silver bullet, we would have been freed Palestine. But one of the things about college, especially, is that it provides an environment where you're very close in proximity to your peers. If you live in a college town, you're not more than 15-minute walk away. And so one of the reasons that activism is so prominent there is because, these social pinballs, these social pool balls are always clanking up against each other. Ideas are being shared, communities are being formed, and actions happen, actions manifest. But when you get out into, the adult world, there's a lot fewer opportunities where you can have that sort of conversation or have these sort of revelations or debates or discussions. If you're working in an office, you can't be, arguing about Palestine really loudly. Otherwise, your boss will come in there and be like, no, don't do that. And so the core of any organizing project are the connections between the people. And the more connections you can build with individuals in your peer group, the more likely it'll be that you'll be able to say, hey, you should come to this thing with me. Or, hey, you should read this article. What do you think? Or, hey, you should think about this issue because it affects us all. And if someone is like, oh, it doesn't affect me, it's like, well, where do your police departments get their training? Or what about all this surveillance technology that you're worried about being used on you? Well, you should think about these. But those only happen with these one-to-one connections. So you just got to find where you can. And these spaces like this, I mean, of course, people here are already activated on this issue. But other third spaces that aren't work or home are really the only thing that we, as average non-billionaires, is the only thing that we have to affect the political system that we live in. So we have to take advantage of them.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Are there any other questions that we have for Bryce? I have a 5-second rule. That's really not a 5-second rule, but... But okay, thank you so much, everybody, for the Q&A. And thank you again, Bryce. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for that hand clap.
Hi, everyone. I am so honored to be here. I've been in tears all night. I'm a crybaby, so I'm going to try to make it through. But this song is called Rise Up. It's very close to my heart. If you guys have heard it, by Andra Day. She is a very powerful person as well, paving the way for a lot of us. So here we go. You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find your fighter. But I see it in you, so we can walk it out and move mountains. We'll walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up Rise like the day, now rise up. Rise unafraid, I'll rise up. And I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. And the silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, and you feel like dying. But I promise you we'll bring the world to its feet and move mountains. Bring it to its feet and move mountains. And I'll rise up, rise like the day, and I'll rise up, rise unafraid, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, high like the waves, and I'll rise up, in spite of the ache, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. All we need is hope, and for that we have each other. For that we have each other. All we need is hope, and for that we have each other. Thank you.
My name is Riley McFeeters. I'm one of the Poetz Portal founders as well. I'm going to give you guys a brief statement on behalf of Poetz Portal in regard to tonight, and then I'm going to call up our first poet, and we're going to get into the poetry. Poets for Palestine. All right, this is written by K2. He cannot be here because he's in Georgia meditating, but he's here in spirit. As poets, we are obligated to communicate the spiritual and material truth of what we see. The Palestinians' lands were stolen and converted in a Zionist state project justified by the West with a biblical mythology. Palestinian resistance, resilience, and will to life and sovereignty must be told, retold, and upheld. Humanity, not special or elite interest, must be served. We poets stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine against genocide's enablers and profiteers. Genocide and apartheid are not ever acceptable. Genocide and apartheid are not ever acceptable. Poetry is not a luxury, but sacred expression. Humanity's deepest striving for peace and beauty. Truth is our obligation. Morality, empathy, witness, and resistance our pledge. All right, I would like to introduce Jessica Lynn, our first poet of the evening.
Our fucking manicured lawns, our photoshopped, curated Instagrams, our book of fake faces that we send out to digital communities in hopes of obtaining likes to feed our insides. What next? What next? What will I post next? Perfectly polished performances, carefully crafted responses to friends' achievements of their sons and daughters. Comparison is a thief. It haunts the gardens. I reach down, pluck a caterpillar from my ankle, hold her up to the sun. 6,107 miles away, that same sun canopies the children of Gaza. They hold their kites to the sky in defiance of sniper fire. They don't care about your weeds or your social feeds, your dandelion overgrowth. I blow a wish from the river to the sea, that one day they'll be free. Don't you see the same mentality that fuels the need, feeds the machine? We scream red, we scream blue, worship, celebrity gossip, fake news. Who are you? Really? Who the fuck are you? Underneath it all, give me something real, guttural, below surface level. Meanwhile, tents weep, grounds bleed beneath stolen Palestinian dreams. People simply wanting to be. Tell me, how are any of us free? How are any of us free if we are not working toward liberation from the great American scheme?
Give it up for Jessica Lynn. One of the things that I always tell everyone, and I will say it here, this mic is important as poets. When we get on this mic, we bear everything that we hold within. And so it's important that I ask that everybody just respect the mic, okay? Our next poet is going to be Ahmed Abdelmajid, and this is going to be a video that you'll be able to listen to for his poem, and it is called What If?
What if I was shot today? My lifeless body, my blood-stained keffiyeh, my face lit up your screen. Would you remember how tight my hugs were? What if my house was bombed today? A concrete and steel heap of what it used to be. Would you remember our laughter echoing in its rooms? The dinners we had, the late nights of cigarettes, cards, and tea? Would you recognize my arms sticking out from underneath the rubble? What if you see my child's face covered in ash, dried blood, and debris? Would you run towards him with your arms wide open? Would her uncontrollable sobbing in your embrace bring memories of her giggles as she hopscotched her afternoon away on the sidewalk? Would you recognize the tatriz of my wife's thobe? What if we run out of what ifs? Will I then cease to be a number? Will I then have a name and a face?
Hand clap. Next poet that we have up is going to be Brianna C. Johnson with the poem Civil Unrest.
Civil unrest. There can be no rest for Palestine. The weary, broken down civilians are constantly preyed upon in their own rubble-ridden communities. The powers that be have determined their lives do not matter, which is why they are hunted and slaughtered like animals. Human rights violations, fucking genocide. Palestinian cries and pleas for ceasefire drowned out by bombs and airstrikes. Palestinian bodies wounded without time or hospitals to heal. Palestinian blood spilled in the streets. Blood of freedom fighters. Blood of worried mothers. Blood of fathers, uncles, brothers, never to be seen or heard from again. Innocent blood of babies and children, confused as to why they can't play or learn or breathe like other children. As I stand here, taking in breaths to read this poem, I wonder how many innocent civilians, mothers, fathers, how many more innocent Palestinian babies and children have taken their last breath.
Amazing, amazing poem, Bree. The next poem we have is Lauren McGrail with the poem Here We Are, and it will be a video.
The poem that I'd like to read today comes from a Facebook post, day 372. Who will find the body of this child? His family is carrying in plastic bags to where they will bury him. His laughter in one bag, his fear in another. The sweetness of his voice in the bag his sister holds. The wind that blew through his hair as he ran, his brother holds the bag with that. Not long ago, he lay in his crib, making sounds that began to weave themselves into sentences, stories. Who will piece them together now so that he can sleep in the earth, a whole boy? Here we are. We will. We who live in a blood-stained country of complicity, lies, and silence. We who are awake with guilt, shame, and heartache. We will. We will help you piece him together so his whole body can rest in a peace he never knew. We will do it by joining you and listening to his laughter, his sentences becoming stories. We will hold you in your groaning and silent keening for your boy blown to bits, now gathered in bags. We will help you dig in the dust a shallow grave as you recite from the Hadiths words that welcome him home to Allah, words for patience for your loss. We will piece him together by weaving him into our prayers, that this genocidal killing, bombing stops, by working for an arms embargo, by telling your stories so that many others will know that all these deaths are personal because all are kin and nobody's body belongs in a plastic bag. My name is Reverend Lauren McGrail. I'm a UCC pastor, poet. Thank you.
The next poet is going to be Jacob Girding with the poem Dreams Lives On in You in honor of Shaban al-Dalu.
Maybe like myself a few months ago, on your social media feed, you may have seen a young man engulfed in flames after an Israeli airstrike bombed a hospital where he was. This poem is in honor and in memory of him. 19 years ago, my lungs filled with air, a new generation of hope. With my parents, I now share. The uncertainties of life, what dreams will I hold? Endless memories held closely, stories that must be told. Fast forward to today, my dreams coming true, to study software engineering, to be one of a few. Life hasn't been easy, but my family brings me joy. My dreams quickly slipping, the bombs now destroy. I just began my studies when the bombs took my classroom, the places where I dreamed and learned, now a concrete tomb. We searched for shelter elsewhere, of which this was not the first. My hopes and dreams now distant, as we with others dispersed. It's hard to think about the future when the present is filled with smoke. Surely this is only a dream that you'll pinch me, say it's just a joke. But you don't, and the only joke is how this is allowed to continue. And now I've been injured and wonder if courage lives within you. Do you have courage to speak up for us, to tell them to stop this constant bombardment that now feels like a deepening abyss? My hair is gone, my mind is depressed, the trauma has replaced my dream. I sit now in a makeshift hospital tent. What was that? Another scream? Oh no, orange and red surrounds me. The screams are growing in number. The temperature is rising, so is my fear. Many others wake from their slumber. My worst fear is coming true. Death is now replacing my dream. Death has come for my life, yet another victim of the regime. Lungs once filled with air, now overflowing with smoke and death. With an ivy in my arms and hope still on my mind, I took my final breath. Look after my siblings and dad, please. Don't let my death be in vain. My dreams now live deep within you, so let that be your greatest gain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Our next poet is Marcy Lawson with Breaking Point.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming and for Poet's Portal. It's wonderful to have poetry back in this space. I want to begin by quoting Amanda Gorman's "Call Us What We Carry." And I have a couple paragraphs from her book that I thought were appropriate for tonight. This first one was from page 1, a section called Ship's Manifest. To be accountable, we must render an account. Not what was said, but what was meant. Not the fact, but what was felt. What was known even while unnamed. Our greatest test will be our testimony. And then from a section called Closure, page 200 and 201. In a poem, there's no end. Just a place where the page glows wide and waiting, like a lifted hand poised and paused. How we are moved says everything about what we are to each other, and what we are to each other, if not everything. My poem I'm reading tonight, and thank you for accepting it, is from my book, Breathing Glass. And I just want to make mention for people that you should never give up, because the cover of Breathing Glass was from an exhibit of Sandy Skoklin. And Sandy had this exhibit at St. Francis University many years ago. And I was so enthralled with it, I wrote a poem about it, Breathing Glass, and I wanted to use the cover on my book, but you have to get permission, so I kept at it. It took me 3 years. Never give up. So I've got the cover, Breathing Glass. And my poem, I'm not reading Breathing Glass tonight, but I'm reading Breaking Point. It's a breaking point, they say, as if these refugees hadn't found their breaking points again and again. And still they walk, they crawl, they sit and stare. They wonder if a future might be possible as death waits in the shadows. They are streaming through these foreign lands and now through our dreams. Raw reality laps the shores. We don't want you, shout the streets, go back. But it's too late, and so they wait, starved and scared. Children reach out for help as countries turn away.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Marcy. The next poet you will hear will be Ahmed Abdelmajid with the poem, I Have a Confession to Make. And Michael will read this poem.
Ahmed Abdelmajid was one of our board members when he lived in Fort Wayne, and Since he moved to Connecticut, he is now one of our advisory board members of Indiana Center for Middle East Peace. And I'm really humbled and honored to read this poem on his behalf. I have a confession to make. I'm a liar. I lie every day. I lie multiple times a day. How are you? I'm great. Lie. How's your family? They're doing well. Lie. The smile on my face? Lie. The comfort I broadcast? Lie. The confidence I exhibit? Lie. Liar, liar. My whole world is on fire. And if you ask me about any of this, I will tell you that this is nothing but a failed attempt at poetry. And with a smile, I will tell you, no, really, I'm fine.
Thank you so much, Michael. So I will read a poem. My name is Tahelia again. I will read the poem, and it is called Plastic Bags. Walmart, Kroger, CVS, Walgreens, Target, and Myers. They all have something in common. They all have plastic bags. We buy our groceries, and we get a plastic bag to carry them in. I didn't realize until now that they had so many uses. Walmart, Kroger, Meijer bags become lunch pails for black folk. Oh wait, Meijer is a little too expensive for black folk. But Target be a trash bag when our money wasn't hefty enough to buy some more. CVS and Walgreens hold trinkets we throw in a junk drawer. But I never thought a plastic bag could be a body bag. You have a baby, they grow up a little child, and then boom, your whole life is a war-torn memory. A playground of debris and a squeaky swing set. A bus stop full of laughs you won't send off to school again. Instead, these plastic bags carry a keepsake of limbs from a child you carried for 9 months in your womb. I don't know if I could ever look at a plastic bag the same again. There's a mother who is carrying her legacy in a plastic bag. Again, I didn't know plastic bags carried on legacies. I literally want to throw this poem away. Is there a plastic bag to dead this poem? Carry its body to a resting place? Walk next to the mother who's carrying a bag with the head of her son? How strong she has to be to carry a plastic bag. How strong do I need to be to carry a plastic bag? And I can't even carry this poem. At this time, we're going to go ahead and open our open mic. And the first person on the open mic is going to be Colleen Connell Mitchell.
This is a poem whose first version I scribbled out on December 2nd of last year, infuriatingly enough. And it is called The Hypocritical Oath. Do no harm. They say the doctors don't actually make this oath, but I wonder if we might just make this oath collectively. If this is the promise we make to be human in the world, do no harm, do no harm, do no harm. But today there are mothers with empty arms and babies with nowhere to be buried and bombs besieging a land that was already unsure how to hope. Every day I dig deeper into the reality that the powers that are supposed to represent me have dropped 2 letters from the oath of humanity and declared their own oath. do harm, do harm, do harm. They declare as they throw our money and their weapons behind terror mongers and death dealers, claiming history is on their side. I sit trying to wrap words around unspeakable things, so you will listen to the collective human cry. Do no harm, do no harm, do no harm. A voice bellows from beyond the veil. It is the ones who wanted so badly to live, but now do not, because we have forgotten our promise to one another. Do no harm, do no harm, do no harm. Will you sit in silence, or will you lift a voice and join the chorus of mouths filled with melon as they sing of freedom? Do no harm, do no harm, do no harm. We're waving our olive branches resolutely, trying to summon doves, but only vultures hatch from your unwillingness to hear us. Do no harm. When the whole world quiets and its long-awaited end comes, and we make account for the songs we sang while Palestine cried, I hope you will be able to say that you sang with us. Do no harm, do no harm, do no harm. Let us together with one voice decry the croaking of hypocrites who have usurped our humanity in service to personal power, and instead sing in one voice a chorus of liberation, a harmonic melody of global indignation. Do no harm, do no harm, do no harm.
Thank you so much, Colleen.
Hi, my name's Elise. I came here today not expecting to do this, but I found this in my drafts, and so we're gonna go for it. This is called Every Broken Body. Eaten away from inside, the child waits on a broken boulder for his father. What once was a great building, what once was a great pillar. Twisted rebar furs the gaping holes in concrete walls, and hands pull out the corpses. Children play with jacks and marbles, play with cards and dice. He saw every broken body stolen out from under these iron weights and put on truck beds for transport, covered over with white canvas sheets spattered with precious blood. He is dead, the fruit of his love undone, and in his dying, his fingers rest on the wet pavement, the hot pavement. Let justice give us some sort of blessing. Cry out, country. Cry out, salvation. Cry out, wine and vinegar. Cry out, velvet and linen. Our revenge will be the laughter of our children. Thank you.
My name is Zdenka, and I have like a really personal connection to this kind of like ancestral history, my own personal history as somebody that has lived through a genocide in Bosnia. And so this, I'm working with this idea of making sanctuary with disturbance, because like I'm coming to you as a person that is viscerally shaken by the experiences of living through like a war zone. And yeah, but I still have, I'm here because I have something to give. And I wrote a couple of different poems, and this is the last one that sort of is, yeah, like a, I'm not sure exactly how to explain, like, just like what's moving through me right now as somebody that has experienced these kinds of things and is like witnessing this happening in the world now. So yeah, the poem goes like this. Are we being born or are we dying? How can both be true? How can we honor our dead? What ritual in the heart of winter can light the candle of remembrance? We are in a collective darkness. And how can we still dance this desire into being? What is asking to be transmogrified And who will have the courage to perform the sacred alchemy if not me? If not all of us? In our many long bodies dragging through the streets of centuries, what did your ancestors carry in their bags? And what heroic theories longed to be discarded for a simple being to take place? Of picking up something beautiful and bringing it back home in a pouch, a warm place, something for holding. Sacred in our beds, we are safe, but our bodies aren't sure of this, can't relax into being held by the great mother who is always waiting with arms outstretched towards us all. No one is turned away from her warm embrace that holds everything equally. No one cast out. How can we let her generosity spill into the parched and aching cracks of our heartbreak? How can we offer this shelter to ourselves and others over and over again as ritual for the desolation that haunts our holy ghosts, still striving for surrender? So let them rest here. Let them remember their place in the family of all things.
Amawale Ketu Alawadu Coherence, and it's going to be a video.
Coherence, fractured mirrors reflecting the chaos of our time. I was born a black woman and now I am become a Palestinian. Against the relentless laughter of evil, there is less and less living room, and where are my loved ones? It is time to make our way home. June Jordan, Moving Towards Home, 1982. Coherence, fractured mirrors reflecting the chaos of our time. 1. The years point past reality TV show style genocide in Northeast Africa. U.S. constraints contain no peace, and talk cheapens the bodies sacrificed in the thought, bludgeoned, tinkering, meta-terrorized edges of mind fright. The consecrated body on fire. Shaban al-Dalu, 19 years old, a software engineering student in Gaza, burned alive with his mother in a tent when an Israeli airstrike hit the Al-Aqsa Hospital refuge in Deir al-Balah. Shaban on an IV drip, the result of an earlier airstrike on Al-Aqsa Mosque, to where he and his family fled after being displaced from their home by the IDF. Shaban, responsible for the care of 2 younger brothers, 2 younger sisters, and his parents, sacrificed at the pyre of fear, revenge, and U.S. politics. 125 hostages tunneled deep in the care of Gaza Liberation malign Hamas guerrillas labeled militants by Western corporate media, highlighting the cheers that rise from angst-saturated tongues of Israeli citizens grown up from pups to harbor bludgeon, blind theft, and murder as God's commandment. The Zionist state othering the unseen Palestinian othered. Zion's masters skewing their own imaginary, writing terror and strewing the blood and the bodies of their captives on sanctuary walls. 2. An honest accounting requires that you call Hamas what they be, freedom fighters, identifying Israeli apartheid as colonizer state, spotlit in history's sunshine, a flaming Zionist fringe executing war by starvation and free-falling U.S. bombs, pushing U.S. unipolarity as imperial orderless settler domination, fed by military-industrial complexions, aggregating dollars at the expense of lives ripped up in capitalist doublespeak, the talk of 2-state solutions when no such be even remotely possible, where the American colonist order seeds solitary settlements situated in the Holy Land, moving inexorably to wider war with Iran in the name of U.S. hegemony as the only conversation on the table. The Israeli state, a U.S. aircraft carrier, bludgeoning Northeast Africa. 3. Another Palestinian mother carrying her child's severed head in a plastic bag. Another Israeli mother agonizing over her child's year-long captive fate. Another Palestinian father's bleeding hands digging rubble from his daughter's eviscerated body. Another Israeli father protesting his son's military sacrifice. Palestine, the besieged land of too many tears.